is a flat washer, the lock washer, and then the nut. And like I said before, when you put this on, there is a hole here, and there's a nipple at the bottom of the internal plate here, so it needs to line up, because that keeps this from free spinning. So now we're just going to lift this internal part here. We have the lifting strap through the eye hole, so we can now lift this internal part. Because before we had it around this plate here, which is what we wanted. Yeah, just lift it up so it looks like that. And then I gently slide this underneath it. Might do a little bit more. That's good. And I try to line it up. Okay, so once I get the shaft in the hole here to get started, then I'm going to try to definitely make sure to line up the hole with the nipple on the bottom. Come on now.
Hold on, I'm just taking it.
Okay. You need a flat washer, the lock washer, and the nut, and that will just go here on top. Like that. And then you're going to tighten this as tight as you can, but you want to make sure that the nipple here is lined up in the hole on this flat washer on here as well. That nipple will keep this whole internal port here from like free spinning, and that's what you want. You don't want to flatten that. There you go. So once you get this all on, then you want to tighten it with the 1.5 wrench. So you want to make sure that you tighten this nut as tight as you can, because this is very important. If this thing gets loose, and this nut and all comes off, then you're going to lose this spider and all of the attachments to it, and then that's going to be at the end of the cruise. And so then you want to make sure there's a hole in here, so you want to put a cotter pin in here as well to secure this so that it does not come off. Internal part up, we're going to just lift up the whole thing, and we're going to, there's holes right here on both sides of these poles, and that's where the T-pins go in, so all the way up. And so it's called a T-pin because it looks like a T. And once you get both of those in, then you can lower it back all the way down. And that's it. So now we're going to put the spider weights on. And it's good to have like a rubber backing on it, because you've got lead weight on this aluminum, and it will corrode it over time, especially if you're doing a multiple cast. So I usually kind of put it together like that. And I actually so I try to get the assembly kind of all put together before I lift it up there. And again, you want to have the bolt and a washer, flat washer, another flat washer, and the nut. So the bolt and the flat washer are on one side, the lead weight, and then the rubber flat washer will go on the back of here with the nut. And you can go ahead and get both of them ready. Just makes it a little easier, especially if you're doing it by yourself. And I usually put the washers and nuts up here to make them easily accessible, along with the 9/16 wrench socket. Or you can put them down here. So I find it's easier if you start from the bottom one and then put the top one on. It's just easier to hold it. And then you're going to get the washer. Nut. Get that hand tightened, and then I still keep my hand on it, but then I have it on the bottom, the washer and the nut. And now you can tighten them.
And there's 8 of them, right?
And then once you do this, yeah, there's 8, so you need to do all 8. And again, you want to make sure these are on really tight. And throughout the cruise, it's not a bad idea to go back through and double check to make sure that the nuts and bolts on here are tight, and on here, and especially this one right here. After every couple of casts, you should definitely double check this major bolt here, the nut, to make sure that it's tight, because it will loosen up over time. So now once you have this and at least the spider on, you're ready to put the top weights on. So if you have a number of people helping you, it's kind of good to get up groups, to have somebody kind of stand here and here, and somebody hand the weights to them, and they can just put it on. But if you're doing it by yourself, it's kind of easier to lower this a little bit, so that the prongs aren't quite so high up. Just when you do it, make sure you don't put it on the deck or on the floor, because you're going to be adding a lot of weight on here, and it's going to make it really heavy and probably damage that. That's good. And when you're in here, make sure you're very careful, because there are the bolts right here do come down, and you hit your head on it and it hurts. And so normally I will have a spacer here, like a metal spacer, that I put on here on one side, and that gives you easier access to the bolt and the nut in here that you need to tighten up. And when I do this, I try to keep it a little even, so I don't put all the weights all on one side. I mean, you can put like a brick or 2 on one side and then a brick or 2 on the other side and alternate, but I would put all 8 bricks on one side and then all 8 on the other. And be careful that you don't pinch your fingers when you drop them. Okay, so now I have little tabs that I put on here, as well as a hose clamp. So it's just basically just a like aluminum metal with a little screw on it. And so as you turn this, it actually does like a brake on it. And so that's what you want to do. And then on top of that, I usually use hose clamps that I put on here as well. So what I will do then is I'll tighten this up, and then I'll tighten this up as well. So it just acts up as a double brake. And this is something that you also need to be aware of, that the weights will sometimes kind of shift during going down in deployment. And so you really need to make sure that you check these periodically, as well as the main bolt, the main nut. So once you have all the main bricks that are led on, then you can lift up the internal part again, and then you want to make sure to put the T-pins back in. You need to put both of them on. And then you just lower it all the way down to take the weight off at the top, make it and then if you want, you can go ahead and continue on with the spider weights or whatever.